Welcome to the Branding Room Only podcast, where we share career stories, strategies, and lessons learned on how industry leaders and influencers have built their personal brands. Now, let's get started with the show. Hi, everybody. It's Paula Edgar, host of the Branding Room Only podcast, where I bring on influencers and industry professionals to talk about how they have built their personal brands, their reflections on brands, their advice for us about their brands. And today, I have someone who's certainly going to talk about one of my favorite subjects, which is self-promotion. Lisa Bragg is my guest today, and she has literally written the book on how to talk about success. Her book, Bragging Rights, How to Talk About Your Work Using Purposeful Self-Promotion, helps people get the opportunities they desire and deserve. She's a speaker, advisor, and professional mentor. Lisa, welcome to the Branding Room.
Yay, thank you. I'm so excited to be here. Really excited. What an honor. Thanks.
I'm excited to have you. So let's jump right in. So I have a set of questions that I ask everyone at the top and the bottom. In the middle, we kind of go wherever we need to go. So the first question I have for you is, how would you define the concept of a personal brand?
Yeah, and I knew you were going to ask me that. And you know what? I think I overthought it for a long time where, personal brand for so long was all about, it seemed like it was all about those people to get you to buy into those photography courses and become a lipstick influencer, like my lifestyle, everything. And so I think it really tainted my thinking of the personal brand word. And I'm also quite a wordsmith. My background's journalism. I love research. So I think I overthought it because I'm like, oh, personal brand, it's kind of has an ick factor. So I changed. I was going to say evolved, but maybe it's just adapted to professional brand. And so that's where I really talk about professional brand. And professional brand is how you show up in the rooms and how people know you in the rooms that you're in, whatever those rooms are. So very much personal brand, but it's just that little bit of a nuance that it's not about becoming a social media influencer. While we do want to have influence, of course, we want to have influence. It's not about being in the social media world. So that's where I tweaked it a little bit, but it's not the logo. It's not the website. It's not all those things. It's about who you are at the core and how you're here to serve the world. And that's really what I want to get across to people is that if we have to say personal brand, it is really the essence of you that you carry with you and that you want people to know you by.
100%. I think you said something that I get asked this question about all the time. It's like, are your personal brand and your professional brand different? And for me, the answer is no, because you bring the personal to your professional and you bring the professional to your personal. But what you're getting to is that it is not label based. It's the who you are and how you add value as opposed to just the labeling that you put on it, which I 100% receive.
Exactly.
I get mad when anything I love, I get mad when the labels change. For example, Tropicana, when they changed the label, I was irate. But anyway, that's a whole nother story. Okay.
I think we're also evolving on all of this too. So as we refine, especially since we have all these layers to us, people say, well, your online life, your offline life. No, we're in so many different rooms now, but it's that we have, we're getting more in depth into the study of what does it look like to have a personal brand, a professional brand? What does it look like to talk about success? Because we don't have our aunties or our nonas or our grandmothers or any of those people out there amplifying our successes and talking about us anymore. So it's really up to us to do these things. And so understanding who you are is that self-reflection piece is really critical.
Oh, I'm so excited. I can't wait to jump into this. Okay. But I'm focused. All right.
Focus.
Lisa, describe yourself in 3 words or short phrases.
I think maybe you can tell already I'm pretty passionate. I think passionate is one thing. I love talking about success and what success means and leadership. I think those are things, but leadership feels like, now that I say it to you, feels so weak. I don't know, because passion's just so strong and so hot, but
leadership doesn't sound weak at all.
Passion is it sounds like a wah. It doesn't sound like, it sounds like I'm trying to sell something, but it's like the passion piece. But how can we all be better leaders? Because I know I haven't been the greatest leader in the past. And how can I continually evolve to the people that are under me, that need my care, that I need to help evolve as we change in this quickly changing world. So those are my answers. I'll stick with it.
I will tell you, leadership does not sound womp. It doesn't sound weak. It sounds strong. And what I love about leadership as a word is that it is an action. It is a label. It is an ethos, right? It's all of those things incorporated into it. So I think it sounds really strong. And it resonates for me because I do believe strongly in leadership. I think it will be what changes the world. We all realize that we are leaders and that we
All
can.
of us,
Mhm.
all of us, every single one of us, no
Yeah.
matter your age and stage, for
Mhm.
sure.
Yes. All right. So tell me, do you have a favorite quote or motto? Mantra?
You know what? When I was writing the book, I really thought about so many of the quotes and so many of the thinking and the people who are behind the quotes and was so intentional about all of it. So many of them are about how we lift each other up together. So some of them are the ones that, like I like Serena Williams, the success of every woman should be the inspiration of another. We should raise each other up. I love also one from Gloria Steinman. It's about lighting each other's torches. And she was told when is she going to pass the torch? When she, passed a significant age milestone. She's like, I'm not going to pass my torch. That's not the point. It's that I'm going to continue to light more torches along the way. And I thought that's really significant for the world that we live in. So those are two that I can think of off the top of my head. But I think another one is play long-term games with long-term people. I think that's another one. Oh, one more is collaboration over competition. And that one I couldn't find a source for it, but how do we collaborate instead of thinking about being a competitor? Because so many of us now, we do intersect. We are doing the same thing,
Yeah.
but my story is different than your story. And we might need different people for different times. So why are we always at this miserly mindset instead of having that abundance mindset where there's enough for all of us, especially if we're coming at it from different ways. So those are a bunch of them that I just love. So just sharing all of them.
Those were a good set of quotes. I love the talking about abundance and that mindset that, we are, and I think particularly in spaces where if you think in this, there's only the pie is only so big. We've already lost, right? It's like no, we're in a bakery. We just keep making pie, and it's going to be enough for all of us. And now I'm hungry. But anyway, that's another story. Okay, so what about a hype song? So this is a song that gets you hyped, like they know they're going to get 100% Lisa when you are playing the song, or you were having a bad day and you need it to lift you up, and it could be the same song or different ones.
Yeah, and I have so many, but I'm not going to give you a whole list again, though. But my number one is the Struts. It Could Have Been Me, and there's a sing to version by Haley where what it's about is that it could have been me, and if I wait and if I don't do it, the regret that would come from not living and being present and living my life. That I think it's really a song about regret, and it's how do I really feel that when I have my inner troll coming to really say, don't do those things and, just play small and stay hidden. That's okay. The song really it also has a very Queen sound to it. The Queen, the band, like Queen as in rock and roll. So it's really that rock anthem. So it's an anthem that really gets me hyped up and don't worry when plans don't work out, just got to keep going. And it helps me channel my inner rock star. So I think that's why I like it so much is like, okay, I'm going to do this and make it happen. So yeah, Could Have Been Me by the Struts.
I love that. And again, the soundtrack that we are making for the podcast is going to be on fire because it's everywhere. And I think that might be my first sound. No, that's not true. It's not my first soundtrack song. I retract that, and I will let forward the people who are listening will hear, and they will love as usual, and they will tell me about it as well. All right. So tell me a little bit about the Lisa story. Where did you grow up, and how did that impact your brand?
Yeah, so I'm a downtown Toronto kid. So inner city before inner city was cool and the place to be. It was pretty gritty, and people have quickly forgotten how Toronto was not that long ago. And so growing up in a very working class neighborhood with people who were brand new Canadians. And, so I think that brought into it. We were taught, put your head down, do good work. Eventually someone will notice you, or play by the rules. That's the only way to get ahead. I think that a lot played into where I am and who I am. Like I was just thinking about who I grew up with and what we would do. And the fun part of it is I wasn't cleaning it, but I'd tag along with my friends who their families would go and clean these office buildings. And I would just go and hang out with them because I wanted to stay with my friends, and they would be cleaning. And of course I would help out. And now I walk into those buildings and I remember like being part of that and seeing these families cleaning these buildings and hanging out with them while they did their work. I'm sure that would not be allowed now with security, but now I go into those buildings and I teach leadership and I'm doing my keynotes and workshops there. So that's something pretty interesting to see, that going from being a working class kid and my hope for my parents was all that they knew. They hoped I would work for the local transit system, so TTC, and be a receptionist, and nothing wrong with that. But that's the hopes that they had for me, that would be a good long-term paying job, not a career, obviously, but a job that would keep me safe and be not working in the shop like my dad had to. So like, that's, the difference of it. And just, keep your head down. Somebody will notice you. Put your nose to the grindstone. That was all those things that I was told, and not the advice that I'm able to give to my daughter today at all. So that was a good reflection piece for me.
Yeah, I like to ask this question because it's different than tell me what you've done.
Mm-hmm.
It is, right? It's a direct connection to really, I think, where our values come from. And values is such a big part of your authentic personal brand, right? It's what drives you, and having an understanding of how you want to navigate spaces and how you want to impact spaces because of what you've seen, what you've done, what you've been taught. So that's why. And that was a perfect, I mean, that arc is a really powerful one. It's kind of like when you see these things where like celebrities are going back to where they grew up and like knocking on the door, and the people are like, "What are you doing here?" And like, "I grew up in this house and on that floor," because you remember the when you weren't and when you didn't, and now the reflection and now where you are. So thank you for that. So tell me about what brought you from the spaces and places in Toronto to being able to impact leadership and talk in this space with this fabulous, fabulous name to become
Paul,
a professional and thinking about how bragging should be rebranded into something that
yeah.
we all want to do.
Well, I'll take the first part, but you just really prompted that great reflection for me. But my whole red thread is really wanting people to be seen and heard. And so many people, going in, being a cleaner in a building, you are not seen and heard. You have people who are nice to you for sure, but you're not. And so I think that even helps, that imprint of that. And then becoming a journalist and always looking for people who were not the obvious. Sometimes contrarian, surprise, but always, in broadcasting, they always wanted the same stories. So no matter what network you were with, you always had pretty much the same stories, right? And so that's not good. So when other reporters would zig, I tended to zag and find my own people, find different people who weren't the same person being interviewed, and wanted to talk to them, because I always wanted my stories to be different and not the same old, same old. And so often I'd have people say, "Oh, we'll go down the hall to Bob or Steve because he's done it before," or, "Well, I need another certificate, so I'll feel good about doing it." And fortunately, I was able to do some media coaching to get different voices, to get people to say, "Okay, I do feel comfortable with talking to you. Let me tell you my story." And then I'd see them go off and get more opportunities and do more things, and have that steps of courage to get more opportunities, and still have those thank you cards to today. And then I started one of Canada's first content companies. So all this lovely stuff we do now, video animation, e-learning, it was all brand new in 2007, back when Justin Bieber was just starting out. I don't know if but I lock it to those dates because YouTube was brand new, and we forget how new all of this is. So helping companies get their people online and be seen as subject matter experts, and then realize that there was really something more than just, "Hey, people, get on social media." There's so much for us to unpack. And why do we feel so skittish or so icky? Icky is the word that my international research came up with, is icky, about self-promotion, about bragging. So why do we feel icky, so many of us? And so that's what I really unpacked, a lot of it. And so the second part of your question is how to reframe bragging. And so my last name is Bragg, as you heard Paula say.
Oh, perfect.
And so growing up with that last name, I'd have people roll their eyes at my successes. And I am one of those card carrying, want to have the gold stars. Like, what do you mean I only got 95%? Like, I really, that's how I was like, go for those high marks. Like, it was one of those things. Oh my goodness. So I'd get those eye rolls when I would get the marks. And so I would start to hide that I was doing well. I still wanted to do well. You couldn't take that out of me, but I wouldn't want to share my successes with people. And so that was a big thing, and realized that we do need to share our successes as I got older. And if I wanted to get anything, I needed to tell people, hey, look, these are the kind of clients I serve. They're those people. And so not to hide that I'm successful and that my tendency is to be a hidden gem. I need to be out there talking about my work and my successes so that other people will be able to find me. So why bragging though? So bragging originally meant shine and shimmer and bravery. And then it changed into how we know it now. If you look it up, it means to talk about one's success with pride. And the reframe is, which I feel like I need a drum roll sometimes, is that the reframe is that talking about one's success with pride, but pride also means justified self-love. And that's where we need to give ourselves the pat on the back. And it's not self-aggrandizement. That's the $5 word that is actually what most of us are talking about when we say bragging. It's self-aggrandizement. That's the ickiness, that puffery, that, oh, I'm better than you kind of attitude that only one person can win. That's terrible. But that's what we see so much on social media, and it turns us off. And that's not what we want to do. But bragging is a good thing, and we need to be out there because it's about success, telling the world how you are here to serve. And so that's why we need it.
I mean, bragging has the unfortunate alignment with boasting. Which is where people get very uncomfortable with. And I've had people come up to me where I'm a big fan of self-promotion, and I call it strategic self-promotion, right? Like you have to make sure people understand your skill set if you want to be able to be impactful and et cetera. But I remember somebody coming up to me and saying, like, this is not, the Bible doesn't say it. Like, I was like, oh my gosh, not, how am I going to fight you about the Bible? Like, I can't fight, right? But I said, you're saying boasting. And that's not what I'm saying that you should be doing. And so how I flipped it in that one conversation, which really resonates for me still, was I said, I think that all of us, whatever you believe, whatever ethos you believe in, whatever, deist you believe in, deity, I should say, you are a reflection of that, right? And so if you don't, then you're also not aligning with what is wanted from you too. And I remember the woman being like, I was like, yeah, I got you.
Yeah. Good for you. And I'll add another tool for you. It's how we are of service.
Yeah.
So if we are not talking about ourselves in some way, shape, or form in a proper way, but if we're not doing it, then we're not of service to the world, because then they're going to go to somebody who's mediocre, and then they're not going to get what they need in the world. So it's the reframe for all of that is it's how we are of service and letting people know, because that's how I'm here to serve. So I'm here to help people be seen and heard. And so that's where, if I'm just my hidden gem, hoping that people will find me on my tiny piece of the internet, I think they're going to go to somebody else, and it's not going to be, so that's why it's being of service to other people.
I didn't think of this question before, but it just came to me, which is this. Do you see any difference in the dynamics between embracing the call to action to brag appropriately and how it's received differently, if at all, between men and women?
So between men and women?
Mm-hmm.
You know what? So much of it is all context-based. Mm-hmm. So you and I are talking about being successful and doing all our successful things and everything. But when you're in different audiences, that's where some people just don't understand. And that's probably the person that you were talking to in your last story. It's like they don't understand because it's context-based. So again, you and I could be standing in front of our yachts and really own those yachts. But if we didn't really own them, like that's the difference. So
yes. I like the visual though.
But they know it's not our yachts because we haven't shown them the moments along the way, the moments that matter. So you can show us, yes, we're in front of our yacht. But if you haven't shown people the way, then that's the problem. So but context matters. That's why sometimes our families love them, but they don't understand us because they see us just as, maybe with that, that teenager or that kid, they don't understand who we've become. And so they don't get our successes, and especially our siblings too. So that's where there's friction. So context matters. But when you're with people who are your peers or want the same things, it doesn't sound like it's problematic. But how men and women brag and talk about their successes. Starting the book, my bias was, I'm a white Canadian woman, and I thought it was like me. I'm trained especially to be even more so polite, even more so pass the mic. It's rude to take the mic. It's almost like I'm just here as a bystander to support you. One of the jokes was like, somebody said to me once that Canadians like to be number three. And I'm like, so are we playing to be number three in the world? Like, okay. But so I thought it was a bias of mine. And then I thought it was also bias against men, that men were not into it. So then I realized I was at an event and I was talking to a woman from New York, and I thought, oh, there's no way New Yorkers are going to be interested in my premise of this book. And the woman says to me, she said, Lisa, and she's just the most well coiffed and just, to the nines on all of it. She said, Lisa, of course that book is for me. I'm Catholic. And I was like, oh, and then somebody told me from the Midwest, and then somebody told me from Australia with Tallest Poppy, and then somebody from the UK, and then India, and then people from New Canadians and people. So it was all these different stories that I gathered from all over the world. And the research showed that there is more of a tendency for women to gravitate to my work. It's interesting, though, that men are wanting to support their teams and are bringing me in almost faster than women-led teams. I'm getting a lot of men saying, my team needs this. They're so awesome. They need some help. Can you help them? So that's been really interesting. But the research also showed that intersectionality of socioeconomic class almost was higher than that. Now, I would love my research to go deeper. So the research survey is still open, but what I found was socioeconomic class really led the way. So if you are of a lower socioeconomic class, kind of like one of my first stories about the cleaners, you don't want to get out of line. There's too much risk to step out of line. And so then you continue to put your head down, do good work, and you're told that eventually someone will notice you. Oh, you're not being noticed, then you're not working hard enough. So that comes into play with people. So yes. Do women still like my work and support it? Yes. But I think there's a lot of men at the table, and they are sending me some notes too, which I just find so satisfying to get those notes.
Oh, fantastic. We'll definitely include the link to the research in the show notes. So I think,
thank you.
Yeah, let's definitely get some more information out there for Bragging Rights, the remix, or whatever the next book is going to be called. Okay. So what is bragging rightly? Like, what does that mean in today's professional world? How do you do it properly?
Yeah. So there's lots of ways to set it up. But, when we want to brag, we want to really know who we are, what we stand for. It's all the things you talk about. So being authentic, know your values, knowing what you want to get out, being intentional, those things. So we're not just talking about everything. Nothing is worse than that soccer mom that lists off all the great, or the new mom that lists off all of her great things that her little baby just did. Great, awesome. But, we want to be really strategic about how many things we say. So that's one of the pieces of it. Context, again, really matters. And then it also matters that we're thinking about our future selves. So where do you want to go? So many of us get stuck on our reputations. And I'm sure anyone listening to your show, their reputation is already solid, but it's about the future you. What is the brand promise? Where are you going in the future? That's really part of the whole bragging right combination. So those things come together. But it's that we want to make sure that we're telling people why we are here and what we are here to do, and how we are of service.
Is that mostly done in terms of when you're thinking about the strategy that most of us get? Is it the elevator pitch? Is that when we get the opportunity to be like, first of all, it's this and this and this? Or are there other ways that you think incorporating the bragging rightly has the opportunity in other places?
I'm going to also be controversial again. I am anti elevator pitch.
Tell me everything. I love controversy.
Yeah. The elevator pitch, well, so few of us are taking elevators nowadays too, right. But the elevator pitch, it's that I'm pitching to you, I'm selling to you that you should be sold to. And anyone here love to be sold to, right? I'm sure everyone in the car is saying no, no one wants to be sold to. And what we need to have nowadays, long-term games with long-term people. It's more relationship-based than ever before. Before it was networking. And yes, we need to network, but network connections, relationships. And so we need to get more into relationships with people. And it is longer, it's less transactional. And that's where I think the elevator pitch is all about transactional. Here I am, blah, to you, right? And then we're not really playing the game of it all. So I think it's really, how do we make sure that we're humans having a human experience with each other and letting each other know how we are here to serve? So if I can say that one more time, but it's
No.
how are we here? And so I'm taking the elevator with you. What am I going to say? I'm going to say hello and talk to you about what just happened as we got on the elevator, or just say hello and have a conversation. But if I had 30 seconds with you and I tried to sell you something, this is not an infomercial world. You change the channel, you would be looking at your phone so fast and away from me, and you couldn't wait to get out of the elevator. But if I said something interesting, especially something interesting about you that I've noticed, then you're going to be more likely to lean into me and have a conversation. So how do we start a conversation that will then lead to maybe a story, because storytelling is so important, that then leads to another story and another story. And that's how humans actually connect. We forget this, I think, from all these sales opportunities, like always be closing. Yes, we need to sell. For sure, we need to sell. But how do we also make sure that we move from just this head-centric world that AI is also going to take over to much more of a heart-centric and an intuition, or whatever you want to call that next sense? Like, how do we move into that? Because I think that's the way things are going to be. And I think we're seeing more and more people allow that to happen as some of the skills that we need to have. We need to have these storytelling skills in our workplaces over and over again, so we can understand each other more. That's a critical piece. We need to understand each other more and more and more, and we need to talk about it.
Yeah, it's that EQ over IQ, right? Or EQ layer over the IQ that really makes people able to navigate better in the world, as opposed to just the IQ, because that ain't enough. So when you were talking, I thought to myself I hear you about the elevator pitch. And I also thinking about how bragging goes into our interactions with each other, both internally, like if you're in a business, internally, how people know what you do and how you can do it, and then also externally. And some of the things that I often hear is that people will say, I don't want to self-promote because people already know what I do.
Well, isn't that, you and I both chuckle, but isn't that great? They already know what you do. Okay, but first of all, probably not enough people know what you do. But how do you also then project the future you? Are you just going to stay as you are in 2024 when we're recording this? Like, this is me today. I think we always need to be projecting our next level. So I'm not saying that all of a sudden you need to go from only wearing purple to then wearing every color of the rainbow, but you need to project where you're going next. So that means just, yes, you're common right now and we know you where you are, but are you not going to move forward? Are you not going to do something different soon? What is your next project? I always want people to say, instead of like, who knew? But saying, well, what's next? Like, what's the next opportunity? Because that's so often people don't know what we're doing. And that person that says, people already know what I do, that's like just so self, like, people don't. People are so into their own lives. They don't have a clue of what's going on with you and all the awesomeness that you have to bring. You have to tell them. You have to tell them again. And then you have to tell them what you told them again.
And people forget, like, we have one of the biases that is clear in our society is the recency. So if you're not incorporating it and somehow so that people will remember, it just does. That's not how it works. And that's the power, I think, of social media, right? Where that I will have not seen somebody for 10 years and they'll be like, I feel like I see you every day. And I'm like, because you did. Thanks. But if you're not thoughtful about it, people won't remember what you do, or remember it from when you did it 5 years ago, to your point about future you, and you're doing something totally different now. And so that, I think it really does incorporate into the branding concept, because branding, I believe brands are supposed to elevate and iterate as you become, right? And then for that, you have to be able to tell the story. You have to be able to brag appropriately at each thing, and then about what you want the next thing to be, to your point. I love that. I love that.
Oh, Paula, that's so good. Because when I was a broadcaster in TV, I went into a local convenience store, hadn't been there in 5 years, had left the station, or had left news by then. I think I'd left news. And so I went into this little convenience store and they recognized me. And I was so touched. It was one of those places I'd get, food and water and would talk to them all the time. So I was so touched that they remembered me, because I had moved away. And they said, "Oh, we saw you on the news." And I'm like, "What?" And they thought I was still on the news because that's how they always remembered me. And that's that whole recency. They have a bias towards that. And so they think it just had happened when it hadn't. So, of course, they didn't know my new details, but they thought it was just recent too. It's so interesting how our mind fills in the gaps unless we then tell them, well, no, here's where I am and here's where I'm going. And, because you never also know who's going to be that next opportunity. So if we're telling people where we're going to go, and that we've left where we've been, like
Right.
that's a big help for all of us. So yeah, those people were so generous and so sweet. But I'm like, I haven't been here in 5 years. I'm like, what? Where?
No, it's so true. I've done, I think many people have, they do different things and they emerge into different spaces. And one of the things that I used to be like, my hashtag was Coach Paula. It still is, but I don't coach people individually anymore. But I always say, are there vehicles to be able to give you the information I think that you should hear, right? So I'm Coach Paula and right now, but I was at a conference the other day and somebody was like, yeah, this is Paula. She is a coach and a speaker. And I was like, let's bring it back around. I was like, yes, I'll always be those things, but forward is I'm a speaker and I'm a podcast host and all those things. And what was, of course I did it with grace so that they didn't feel like, oh my gosh, but it was important so that that person will never say again, coach for it, because how people talk about you is another part. I believe in self-promotion being self-driven, which doesn't mean self has to do it.
Yeah,
Right. So that
absolutely.
hey, do you know the XYZ thing? Now go off and tell everybody who you know. That's still self-promotion.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
the pinnacle, right? That's where we want all these brand ambassadors and champions to be out there talking about us. And we should do the same. Of course, we're going to do the same for each other, right? But that's where we need to make sure people know what's our point of view of the world, what are our values, and we need to articulate it because they're not going to remember all of those things about us. So we need to be putting it on the different touch points that we can. It can be social media, or it can be an email or an in-person visit. It can be any of those things, but we need to let people know so that they can be that person. Again, we think everyone's mind reader and it's going to promote us and talk about us and help us into those next rooms, but they're not without us actually saying things and having the voice to say, hey, here's where I'm going. And it can be, so often we think we have to broadcast it to the world, but we can narrowcast it. It can be an audience of one that you keep telling that one person, this is where I'm going next, this is where I'm going next. And if it's that one key person, they're going to help you get there eventually. So that's where we need to be strategic about it. But yeah, you're not going to get there if just sitting back and waiting. You're just not. But I love that you help that person to see the new you, because who knows where that's going to help you along the way. For
That
sure.
part.
We all have portfolio careers now too. So we need to know, here's how you can use me in the world.
Yeah. Oh, I love that portfolio career. I love that as a term.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, good.
Taken with attribution.
No. And that's the thing. We're all here based
Yeah.
on the shoulders of giants. So I pick it up. That's why we live in such a beautiful knowledge sharing world right now. So you know what, that I can give it to you and you can pass it on and make it your own and make it bigger. And how do we help? So we have this language that really will elevate all of us. So I think that's where, we can say, hey, this is where I learned it from, but now I'm moving it forward. I think that's a beautiful thing of this world we live in.
I love that. Okay. So tell me, I'm going to jump forward here. So we're talking about skills and what it means to brag rightly, brag correctly, et cetera. What are some of the practical steps of actually bragging rightly?
Yeah. So if you want to start to do it right now, I don't know, your audience, I'm not sure their age, but no, it still stands today. But those L'Oreal commercials, because I'm worth it. Do you remember those? Because
Yeah, of
I'm
course.
worth it with the
Yes, of course
hair.
I do.
Well, in the 70s, it was actually really quite it wasn't controversial, but it was quite a movement forward for how they executed those commercials, because it was the woman talking to camera in her own first person voice and talking about her own looks instead of somebody, it was usually a male voice commenting on a woman's looks in the past. And so this 70s commercial was revolutionary. And it was a young copywriter who, I forget her name, but she was just 23 years old. And she's the one who came up with the because I'm worth it that we know now. And because she's worth it, because we're worth it. Like, so now we've moved on with all the different campaigns that I've had. But the word because allows us to have that change. So the commercial for L'Oreal, it's because they cost more money, way more money than the competitor. So how are we going to get people to buy it? Well, it's because I have self-worth, because I'm worth it. And the way we can get around feeling icky about the bragging part of it, the actually talking about our successes, is the word because. I'm successful because I've, read all the books, or I'm successful because I've told 100,000 people my mission, or like whatever it is. Those are silly examples, but it's because, and if you can give it a because, it softens it a bit. Of course, I'd love you to stand in and saying, you know what, I have a $4 million business, like stand in, or $1 billion business, or $1 trillion business, to
because
be
I'm
silly.
great.
Because I'm great. Like, so that's what it's like, huh? Like, so if you can say, I've done this because like you could change it instead of because I'm great. It's because I've really thought deeply about it. So I've taken action. Because if we just say I'm great, they're like, people are more like, huh?
Right.
But it's because I've taken action. So I'm great because I've taken action. So, you want to say I've done this, I've made this success because I've had action, because I've done something, because I've studied under Paula, like whatever it is. And you can have that Bragitude. So you can have a brag. And I did not make that up.
I love that.
I didn't make it up, but it's a brag plus a thank you tied together is a Bragitude. So you can say, I am successful thanks to you, Paula, for having me on the show. I am gaining more people in my audience. Thank you, Paula, for allowing me to be on this show. That's a very simple example of what bragging is. So I am saying I am becoming more successful.
Right.
I am doing greater things, but I also want to thank the people that have helped me. And so when you put them together, it's Bragitude. And so it's a good thing, because thanking people is another piece of bragging. Like we're saying, hey, I'm successful. Thank you. Like that's another thing, because otherwise we're not saying anything. And then that's just downright rude, right? So we need to get sending a thank you card is one of the simplest ways to brag and self-promote. One of the simplest ways that anyone can do right now.
Thanks to you, I have an award-winning podcast. You were one of my guests, like that.
Yes.
I love it.
That, my dear, is beautiful. Bang. It's gold stars to you. 99.99%, but that's exactly it. And that way we can send that out to people. And then they're like, oh, yes, Paula's successful and I'm part of her success. All of us want to be part of each other's successes. That's another thing with my international research is I found that 85% of us want to cheer you on. We want to hear your brags. And it was 12% that said they would ignore you. And 3% said they'd turn around and brag about themselves. Well, I'll take that. I will take that big time. So we do want to hear success stories. And we do want to hear that you have an award-winning, podcast that's beating the charts. And we are thankful to be your audience and also thankful to hear your guests. So it's the knowledge exchange. Yeah.
That's great. So one of the work that I do is around professional development, particularly my love of personal branding across industries. But in addition to that, I bring this lens of diversity, equity, inclusion with an understanding that there's intersectionality, there are different voices and people who have not been traditionally heard. And when I think about some of the pushback that I've gotten about self-promotion, it's been, that's not what we do. Insert whatever the we behind that is. And so there's just cultural disconnect sometimes with the concept of bragging. And so what does your research sort of bring about that? Or what are some of your reflections around bringing bragging to different audiences and having it resonate in certain ways?
It's so interesting because the other day I had a woman who's Latina said to me, oh, well, I don't really need this because as a Latina, we're told to brag and we're told to be va-va-voom and out there. And it's so funny because I had other people not that long ago say, as a Latina, we are told to be demure, to not talk about our successes. And so it's so funny because it's so much about intersectionality, about where you are, what your family brought to it. But culturally, we all think it's our own culture. That's the thing. Like, I'm a Canadian woman, we're taught to be this and this. But then I found that people in India, one of my interview subjects, she said, a lot of it was about, what will they say? Like, what will they say? Like, who's going to say things? And who is they? She said, but we're so worried about what other people will say when we do these things.
Yeah.
In Australia and in the UK, they have the tall poppy syndrome where people cut each other down for their successes. And so we have it in North America too, but that's really where it's gotten momentum and a lot of research behind it. So we all have our little claim to it. It was interesting though, the people from Japan, it's still very much a collectivist society. And so they are not used to having this individualistic self-promotion, but a lot of people are now working for international firms where it's expected that you will fill out your form of where you want to go and your networking and all the things that you've done and the taking credit for things. And so how do you, in a global world, how do you do that? So it's been very interesting to see that a lot of people have a challenge with it. And then how do we overcome it? I think a lot of it is because we're still used to being part of an agricultural society. I know that sounds so old, like what on the farm?
Let me get my almanac.
But we were taught, again, to just do the work. But then again, like I said, we have our aunties and our nonas and our grandmas, and they would used to tell everyone, hey, Lisa should definitely not do that. And Paula should definitely do that. Like they would tell, everyone would know. But now people don't know because they don't know us. There's so many of us out there. And so again, we have to let people know that we are here. So it's just, culturally, so I do get into it in the book in different ways, but it's also so many of us have the same myths growing up. Mm-hmm. So stay in line, put your head down, the cream rises to the top. So meritocracy, mm-hmm. a lot of those things come into play in the book. And, meritocracy, another controversial thing, meritocracy mm-hmm. sounds great, but when you pull out the layers of it, are you close to power mm-hmm. when you say these things, when you do these things? And so, Adam Grant, great author, so many good things, but he over and over again propagates bragging violates modesty norms. And if you were that good, your work would speak for itself, something like that.
Yeah.
But, how can your work speak for itself if you are not near power?
Right.
How does anyone know if I'm doing great work and doing great things, but I'm nowhere near them? I'm not in their circles of influence. So I need to be able to get into the circles of influence. And the only way I'm going to get that there is by talking about my successes. So somebody will either open the door, I'll break down the door, or whatever it needs to happen. But that's the start of it. It's not going to cure all, of course, because it's generationally, it's systems.
Yep.
But the more people can have conversations, the more people like the two of us can have conversations and spark something in our audience's ears and minds and hearts, then things can start to change.
Yeah. Yeah. I 100% agree, and have heard, and particularly about Adam Grant, so much of it's sort of the mountaintop preaching, right? And it's like, well, I'm down here in the valley, so I don't know. Your message is not getting to me in the same way because I don't have the opportunity to get to the mountaintop, right? And the way that privilege impacts our ability to have a platform. So I 100% agree with that, and it's that lens that we need to sort of think about: whose voice aren't we hearing? Why? And how then do we use our platforms to bring those voices up, with the understanding that bringing those voices up does not minimize our own space, right? Right. There's enough pie for all of us, back to the food, right? So that we can all grow and be better together. Which is why I love when men, in particular, when thinking about the gender dynamics, when men understand some of the privileges that they've been afforded within workplaces and societally, and then they take it as their mantle to say, I'm going to shine a light. I'm going to elevate and amplify women strategically, because it doesn't take away from them. It actually gives them more, right? But it also then helps to drive equity in profound ways. So yeah.
That's such a beautiful way to put it. Absolutely. How do you partner with more people to help all of us rise? And we can learn from each other. And that's where, when somebody else, an older man, is working with a younger woman, they can learn from each other in so many ways. That's why, it's not just like, let's help the new generation. It's like, let's help everyone right now to make some changes that we all need to make, because it's good for all of us, necessary for some, good for all. So we need to grow in that for sure.
Oh, I love this. Okay. So of course, because this is what always happens, I'm like, I have so many things I want to ask you about. Okay. So
Part two.
I know. I'm like, you have to come back, clearly. Well, first of all, I haven't had a chance to dig into the book as much as I want. So you're definitely going to have to come back so I can be like, remember when you said this thing? What did you mean about that? So please, you have a welcome. Anytime you want to come back and have a chat, this is a topic that I feel like I'm getting blurry, that I feel like more people need to incorporate and talk about anyway. So we can do as many times as you want because they need to hear it and they need to start to do it. But I
Thanks.
will close our part of the conversation by asking you two questions that I ask everyone, which is this. What is an aspect of your brand that you will never compromise on?
Yeah, and I've had to do some deep thoughts on this lately because there's so many ways when you have a brand new book, there are so many ways to run the system. So there's a system with a book. So if you want to be on the list,
Yeah.
you have to pay. It's a pay to play world. And very few people are there on their own merit. Very few, because it's a system and it's a game. And so I had to challenge myself is what game am I playing? Am I playing the organic one-to-one reaching, growing, or am I going to buy my way on the list? And so I had a hard time with that. I really did, honestly, because a lot of people, why wouldn't you buy your way on the list? It's just marketing. But for me, it didn't feel incongruent. It felt incongruent. It didn't have that who I am vibe to do that. So I had to say, where am I more organic and word of mouth and growing that way of really true followers, true engagement, true partnerships with this? Or am I going to, buy the list? And so that was something I had to really stand on. So when I was thinking about it, I'm like, what does that really mean? And it's just, I think I have to always be authentic to myself. And I feel like it was I felt it like it feels here, even telling you this confessional podcast, it felt like it's like here that I'm like, if I do it, if I get on the list, that I've done it. I think that's what it is. And I think that's a little bit of that might fall back into my got to work hard for everything kind of thing. But I think it's just how I am.
I think that resonates. It's kind of like where people will be like, you have been nominated for this award for $79.95. You can get it on a plaque and it can also be in a magazine. Click here. And then, you get the honor. And I see people use this all the time. Like they're like, I was awarded the top blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I literally got the same email and I chose not to pay for that thing. So, I mean, good on you, because again, there's a lot of superfluous and superficial bragging and branding that happens out there. And if you're not an engaged and knowledgeable audience, you think that there is an actual, like the work has been done to get those things versus, here's the dollar that I paid to make it happen. So that actually rings really true to me when you say that you want to brag about what actually happened, not what you paid for.
Yeah. And I think you picked the right word where it's superficial. I just, but part of me laments that I can't just do it. But part of me is like, I just can't. So, but some of me like take the easy way. It's that what's on my shoulder, which is on the shoulder at the time. So, but it's that superficial. I just can't. I think you can tell I'm pretty authentic. So,
and I will just jump on the good side of your shoulder and say, if it don't feel good, don't do it. And then people, you resonate more with people because you're being authentic, right? So when you see the thing and then you're like, oh, that's not who you were. It is such a disappointment versus being like, oh, I knew that's who that person was the whole time. They didn't. All right. Well, the second piece is branding room only is a play on the term standing room only. And so my question for you is, what is the skill, magic, or experience that someone would be in a room with only standing room only to experience about you, Lisa?
Oh, so good. You're a master of some questions here, then, my friend. But I think I think people are drawn to my passion. I think that makes them lean in and be more curious about why I'm so excited and wanted to really drive these ideas home. I think my passion does add, it's a little bit contagious sometimes. So people are curious about me because of that. So I think it's that. I think I give off enough of that vibe that people give me a little bit of opportunity that they'll listen and be curious about what I have to say. And so I think that's a good thing that, because I was criticized for being too passionate before, and that's a problem, and that's their problem, not my problem. So it's passion.
That could be a whole other podcast that we can go in and talk about that piece. And maybe we should, there's enough people that I know have had that experience where I'm like, there's some there that we need to address and put out in here. So that I'm going to write that down as my.
Okay, good.
Part two. Okay. So first of all, I want to thank you so much for spending some time with me and talking about this, getting this bragging right. And tell me and tell everybody else how people can connect with you. How can they find out about your work? And of course, we're going to put the link to the book on our show notes, but tell everybody.
Yeah, come find me at lisabragg.com, and it's Bragg with 2 G's. And then I'm also on all the social media channels. Well, not all of them anymore because there's so many of them, but LinkedIn is the number one. So come find me there. And I'm also more on Instagram lately, and it's that Lisa Bragg. And I'm happy to follow you. I do have some free things on my website that you can come and get to. So I just appreciate all of you. And if you do get the book, no matter what, actually just follow me and I will cheer you on. It doesn't matter if you have the book or not, but hashtag anything bragging rights. And I'm sure I'll come and make sure that I engage with it and cheer you on all the things that you're doing. So thank you.
Love that. Thank you for being in the branding room, Lisa. And everybody, tell a friend's friend, and tell everybody else. Why don't you brag rightly about Lisa Bragg being on my show? Talk to y'all soon. Bye.